Good morning.
Hello.
Snowy morning
Snowy morning indeed.
in Jackson, Missouri.
Yes.
It is, well, I don't know what day it is when this comes out, to be honest. That's a lot of math.
Thursday, bro.
It's Thursday.
It is Thursday, the 18th.
Yes. I think that's correct.
So we had to cancel young adult service. Pretty late notice, but, we felt like it was the right call at the time with how the roads were being and how everybody else was sliding. We didn't want to put anyone at risk.
We care about your safety.
Yes.
We decided to shoot a podcast of the message series, The Gospel. That was part 2, or you could say week 2. So if you haven't watched that yet, you should probably go watch that first.
Well, listen.
Listen to it. It's audio.
But it's also still a video.
Yeah.
So, you can technically watch the same picture for 30 minutes.
Regardless, we recorded Pastor Michael's second message of the message series titled The Gospel, and it was piggybacking off of the first week, which he said why we ought to share the gospel.
Yes.
So do you want to explain what this message was about, what your second message was about?
Yeah. So knowing why you should do something is important, right? We should know our why. But sometimes, I don't know if you're like me, sometimes we're stubborn, and even if we know why we should do something, it still doesn't motivate us to do it.
Right.
And for me, a lot of times when I realize I'm not doing something that I know I should do for whatever reason, it usually boils down to, on some level, I don't care enough to do whatever that thing is.
Mm-hmm.
I think I used the analogy for the message. I talked about not being good at algebra when I was in high school, and I knew why I needed to do well in that class so that
because you use it all the time in life.
Oh, well, of course.
Yeah,
but
I used it this morning.
Yeah, I do equations when I wake up. It's how I get my brain going. No, at that time in my life, I needed to do well so that I could pass that class, so that I wouldn't get in trouble when I got home.
Right.
And, so I could, move up in my scholastic journey, so to speak. But even though I knew the reason why, I still wasn't performing well in that class. And when I look at it, it's because I didn't care enough at the time to apply myself. So I think that mindset a lot of times is why we don't do things like sharing the gospel.
Yeah.
If you asked any Christian, we all know we should talk to people about Jesus.
Right.
And we all know that should be on the forefront of our minds.
Mm-hmm. But
if you're honest with yourself, when's the last time you sat and had a conversation with someone about Jesus outside of church?
Yeah.
Right.
And so even though we know that, do we care enough?
Right.
And that was kind of the crux of the message Sunday night, was where are the areas that we need to care more to move us towards sharing the gospel with others.
Yeah.
And so we looked at the account of the woman at the well.
Yes.
We find that in John chapter 4. Jesus is on his way. He's traveling and he has to go through a place called Samaria. He sits down at a well. He meets this woman who is drawing water from this well at a very specific time of the day. It's the hottest part of the day. Only reason she's doing that is because in that culture, in that day, Samaritans weren't viewed very, very fondly. And so she was trying to stay away from people. But she winds up having this conversation with Jesus, and I just think there's a lot of awesome things we can take from that conversation. But ultimately, we just see Jesus caring about this woman in a world where a lot of people didn't seem to care about her. He was showing her, no, I see you, I care about you, I value you, and I value this moment. And we're going to sit and we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to tell you things that you need to know. Even if you don't know, you need to know them.
Yeah. Something I've always loved about that account is the fact that he made sure that he got alone with this woman. And I say that because his the disciples that were with Jesus at the time, they didn't want to go through Samaria. And then if they would have come in contact with this woman and they would have known the things that Jesus said or that Jesus knew about her, they would have shunned her. Because they were of a sinful nature, they would have treated this woman how she was treated within the city she lived in.
Yeah,
everyone rejected her.
You even see later when they come back.
Yes,
it says they were shocked to find Jesus talking to this woman, and they wanted to say things, but they were scared to say them. So I see they likely would have that mindset.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes, as Christians, like we're conflicted because we're told we ought to surround ourselves with like-minded people, but also still go in and share the gospel with others. And when we're always with other people, I think that's part of the problem as to why we don't share the gospel, because we all have conflicting viewpoints on when we come into the presence of a non-believer. Some people are just completely scared and they don't want to share the gospel, while others, they may want to share the gospel, but because their friends don't want to, or because their friends may judge that person in that moment, and they're like, oh, well, I guess I better not, because I'm supposed to be hanging out with these guys. But Jesus made sure that he was able to get alone with her, because he knew that in that moment, if the disciples would have been there, it would have been an adverse reaction in the situation.
Yeah.
I always thought it was pretty cool. Obviously, Jesus knew what he was doing, right? Like, he knew she was going to be there. But she always went at noon because it was the hottest part of the day, so she knew nobody would be there, so she would just be alone. But I also thought it was really cool that, like, Jesus, of all people, is also going to be there at noon, the hottest part of the day, doing things other people wouldn't want to do. That kind of thing. Yeah. I always thought that was an interesting, it's super small, but super interesting. That's like, he's the last person that should be there at noon, Yeah. And it shows kind of the intentionality of going after people. Right.
And kind of piggybacking off of what both of you just said, I think it's important to acknowledge, because Tyke, you said that a lot of times Christians can feel conflicted because you feel like, I'm supposed to have these kind of friends, but I'm supposed to go after these people. Yep. So what do I do?
Yeah, it's a hard balance.
It is a hard balance, but one of the things that helps me with that is I have to remind myself, for lack of a better way to put it, to compartmentalize my relationships a little bit. Different relationships serve different purpose in your life. And so my close relationships, these are the people that are going to influence me. These are the people that I'm leaning on in times of trouble. Like, those, to me, those need to be like-minded. That needs to be people with, that's you guys. That's, my wife, my close friends, my circle. Yeah. That's people that, to me, need to be solid biblically and things like that. But there's different relationships in my life that I maintain this relationship with this person because I'm trying to influence them or help them. And those relationships may even come with maybe a different set of rules, in a sense. Like, I'm not going to necessarily be on your turf all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going into a bar downtown at midnight and saying, hey, I'm going to go witness to some people. Like, that's not a good look. I think I've said this in a couple other podcasts, but like, if you're a former alcoholic that got saved, like, you probably shouldn't be in the bar trying to witness to people. Right? That's what I'm saying. So, like, I'm not saying, like, don't go out and reach people. I'm saying use wisdom when that's happening, and use discernment and be smart about it. And, what are the situations that are going to cause you to struggle, cause you to stumble, cause you to be put in a situation you should not be in, and how can you maintain that friendship, that relationship, without compromising your beliefs, your faith, your integrity, things like that.
Yeah. So the first point in your message, I love this one, and it's kind of going. You mentioned something similar in your first message as well, but your first point was to care about the change. care about the life change that's going to happen in that person whenever you share the gospel with them, and whenever you tell them about Jesus and share the love of Jesus with them, because it's not only a way that they can change their life in this earthly realm, like they can live their life serving others, but also the change, the best change that can happen, of course, in anyone's life is that change from heaven to hell, or from hell to heaven, I'll say, within eternity.
Yeah. I just think it's one of those things that as Christians, we don't think about it as much as we should.
Yes.
But when you look at your own life
Mm-hmm.
and you see the difference that Jesus has made in your own life, if you truly believe that Jesus Christ has changed you, how can you not want that for other people?
It's so selfish.
How can you not want to see that change in the lives of people around you?
Yeah.
If you can look at where you were and where you are right now and
Mm-hmm.
not want that for other people, that's wild.
Yes.
Right? But at the same time, I think we all get into these little like realize, like we're focused on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
these little selfish moments in our lives where we don't really think about that as much as we should.
Yeah.
But really, that should be such a huge motivation for us to be going out into the world and going out into our worlds and talking to our friends, talking to our loved ones, our family members, our coworkers, our mailmen, whoever we could, you know what I mean? Because like, I know where I was pre-Jesus.
Right.
I know who that person was. I remember that vividly. And I know who I am now. And it's night and day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so how am I going to sit here and not give somebody else that opportunity?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's I mean, and Grayson, I know in your life, I mean, I've heard your testimony. I know what kind of world you're coming from. Like what are those feelings like for you when you kind of think back to, you know, people you used to hang out with and things like that?
Yeah. Honestly, it's always weird going back to people that you know or hang out with. Like that's probably the most awkward one versus just some absolute random person sitting in Walmart, you know? But a lot of it was they just noticed a change, and we weren't really hanging out anymore, but just social media wise, and things like that. And sometimes a couple of them would ask me some questions, and I always thought that was interesting, but I won't say any names. But if you remember that one baptism that I helped with, he did a random baptism a special one, I guess you could say, because he was about to go off to, I can't remember if it's the Air Force, the military of some sort in another country. Excuse me. But that basically happened just with, I mean, obviously God. I'm not saying I had a major role in this, but he noticed a change in me. He was curious about it enough to kind of ask. And then he was curious enough to come to the church that I was at, which is here. And that ultimately led to him getting baptized at some point, you know, a couple months ago. So just seeing that is absolutely unbelievable, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like I could have been scared enough to not take it serious, you know, but like taking that serious even is a big deal. Something I have struggled with in the past is kind of like you said, the boundary thing with your friends, your close friends, and then your friends that just have different viewpoints than you, or
They're in a
maybe
different
believe,
place.
but they're not all in. Is I always had a problem of finding myself too close to them. Like they wanted to hang out too often. And it was hard for me to say no, because it's like, well, I'm supposed to be there for that person, or, you know, I'm supposed to do this and this and this with that person. And they want to hang out with me. So that's a good sign, right? Like they're not annoyed by what we're talking about, or, you know, those type of things. So ultimately that led to me just kind of like having to cut that person off, which I'm not saying is the right decision. But I've always found that super, super difficult, was just keeping those boundaries to where you don't overcommit.
Yeah.
If that kind of sounds bad, but where you don't overcommit, to where maybe you fall into temptation, even if it's not like, yeah, we're going to a bar and I'm going to witness to them there, but it's just like the way they talk, and it wears off on you, or, you know, just different things like that.
It's tough. It's tough to learn how to set boundaries. And I think that's tough in every every form of relationship
Yes.
that you have, because we care about people. Obviously, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but at the same time, you do have an obligation to take care of yourself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, all of that. And so with those types of relationships, it's always important to ask yourself, what is this doing to me spiritually? Like, yes, we want to try to be there for people as much as we can. Yes, we want to try to love people as much as we can. But if you can look at a relationship and honestly see it is damaging me spiritually, it is doing something to me that I genuinely don't like, and it's genuinely not good for me, my future, my family. I mean, and sometimes, I mean, that can be friendships, that can be family members. I've had all of that happen where it's like, I don't want to have to cut this off or kind of move a little distance between this person, but if I don't, the ramifications are going to be more than what I'm willing to put on to myself. And so you do have to set those boundaries. If you can, and you can still maintain some type of relationship with that person, that's awesome. Right. But if it does come to a point where it's like, this is doing something to me spiritually, and I need to separate from it, you got to make that choice.
Yeah. I've heard it said, and I assume you guys have too, that you are who you are around. You are who you hang around, or you become who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, 100%.
My belief is a little bit different, and it is, you are what you will become what you consume. Yeah. If you are constantly surrounding yourself with non-like-minded people when it comes to your faith, when it comes to Christianity, eventually they're the things that they want to do, the things that bring them joy will begin to be the things that bring you joy. Yeah. And I think we ought to model our relationships as Jesus modeled his, right? We all know about the 12 disciples, but he did have an inner group of 3, Peter, James, and John, who he spent the majority of his time with. And then he had his disciples, but even then, it wasn't just necessarily the 12. At one point, he sent 70 people out, right? Yeah. And then the number one, like over 100 people at one point. But each bigger number got less time. Yeah. We ought to be functioning and molding our relationships that same way. Have that inner group. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be 3. It could just be one other person. Yeah. It could be 5 other people. But function mold your life to where you are spending the majority of your time with friends with those people. Yeah. And then we also have to remember that the word that was used, go, in the Great Commission, when it's translated from the Greek word is actually as you're going. It's not necessarily going out, like dropping everything you have, going out and sharing the gospel with others. It's as you're going throughout your life, be sharing the gospel with others. Yeah. And so oftentimes, like that's not preached, that's not taught. And I think that's why the Great Commission is so scary. Yeah. Because they think, oh man, I have to give up everything I'm doing right now, and I have to go and tell people about Jesus. Well, I can't give up everything I'm doing right now because I have rent to pay. I have a wife to take care of. Right. I have kids. I can't do that. That's not what Jesus was saying. Right.
Just take the opportunity when presented instead of ignoring it. Is the big deal,
yeah. You know. And we're going to talk about that next week a lot. It's more about living your life around these people. Yep. Because, just like you said, Grayson, your friend you were talking about just noticed a change in you, noticed, hey, Grayson is not the guy that he was, a few months ago, a year ago, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's such a powerful thing that people underestimate in themselves. Like, so when we're talking about sharing the gospel, it almost becomes a scary thing. Yep. And it's like, no, just be the person that Jesus is molding you into. Yeah. And those opportunities will come. Mm-hmm. It will happen. The problem is that sometimes we're so busy or so distracted or so consumed with our own fear that we miss those opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's really what this series is designed for, is to help you be able to see those opportunities better, notice them better, and then also be better equipped when those opportunities come.
Yeah.
Because it can be scary. It can be intimidating. But when we truly grasp the importance, the magnitude behind this, why it is essential to our lives as Christians, what it means to the kingdom of God, we'll understand, okay, even if this is a little bit scary, I got to take this step.
Yeah.
You know, the consequences of not taking this step is too big. The consequences of not taking this step could mean that this person doesn't get to experience the incredible thing that I've gotten to experience because I have this relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think a good first step before we end it is just prayer, but two things to be asking God for, and that's one, make the opportunities present themselves.
Yeah.
But two, that if you don't take it, that you're just convicted enough that the next time you do it.
Yeah.
I think that's two, or I guess you could say 2 steps, but one step, prayer. To get started, right? 'Cause how do you start doing this? How do you just walk up to somebody? I think the main thing is just pray about it, seek those opportunities, pray for those opportunities to be present to you. And then, if you miss that chance, just that you feel a conviction that you're supposed to see that person or talk to that person.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think that's all we have for you. We hope there's no snow this coming week so that we can see you.
I miss you guys.
It's going to warm up, so all the snow will
Hit
be
better, man. I'm ready for summer, boys.
Word. I am not a winter person.
Nope. All right. We will see you Sunday night from 7 to 8 p.m. at CPCYA if you are 18 out of high school up to 30 or 31.
30-ish in the neighborhood.
Thank you guys for watching. We hope you have a great rest of your week. Peace out.
Peace.
Peace.